All right, this is John Cola with OKRaw.com. Today we have another exciting episode for you coming at you from beautiful Puerto Rico, right across from the beach. We got the beach air, the ocean air breeze rushing across our face, keeping us cool. And I'm down here visiting one of my best friends, Kaelash Neels, who has started in raw foods in 1995. That's actually when I started, although he started in Germany. I started in the United States in 95. Kaelash has been vegan for 30 years now and has been vegetarian since birth. And we each have our own unique paths with raw foods. Of course, I consider him a yoga master, and he has his yoga teacher trainer. So he trains yoga teachers in Brazil and in the United States, as well as a Feldenkrais practitioner. Of course, he also works at the Ann Wigmore Institute, started at Ann Wigmore in 1999. This guy is a wealth of knowledge, one of my best friends, and I'm glad to have him on the show today, where we will get to share with you guys literally the download with sharing our opinions on many different raw food and health food topics. So you guys, more importantly, can see the differences that two people doing it about the same time over 55 years combined. We have a lot of similarities that you may want to pay attention to, but also we have some differences based on our personal experiences as well. So, Kaelash, is there anything you'd like to say to my viewers today before we get started?
Well, thanks for the great introduction, and I would think we have a lot more in common than we have different.
Of course.
Which is wonderful, and I think that's why we're such great friends.
Yep.
And yes, wealth of information. I always learned a lot from you, and I'm glad to see you in my yoga class.
Yeah, that's one area I definitely need improvement. I need to do more yoga and more stretching, and I want to get involved with some of the Feldenkrais that he does to literally enhance movements and heal people. So, I'm actually down here because it's highly probable that I'll be buying property right next to Kaelash and starting, a farm, and we'll be starting a retreat center, hopefully one of these days, when everything comes in alignment. All right.
I'm looking forward to that.
All right, wonderful. So let's get started and share the guys tons of information on raw foods. We're just basically I'm going to introduce one topic. We'll each share our thoughts, and then Kaelash is going to introduce a topic, and then I'll share my thoughts, and he'll share his thoughts on it. So the first topic is our thoughts on fruit. So Kaelash, what are your thoughts on fruit? Is it the wonder food? Should we only eat fruit? Should we eat a little bit of fruit because it's too much sugar, or what do you think?
I've been at both ends of the spectrum. I was basically introduced to raw foods through natural hygiene. And at the beginning, because I loved fruit so much, I would basically only eat fruit. For a few years, that was really pretty much all I ate, plus some nuts too, and too many cashews, actually. So lots and lots of fruit. And then I went the other extreme. I went to not eating any fruit for one entire year. Basically vegetables, greens. I'd make green soup and energy soup, the blended microgreens in the soup and different things. And, that was the other extreme. And I felt okay. But then when I brought some food back, I felt a lot better. So now I typically have 2 green meals like salads or energy soup, and 2 fruit, maybe with some greens meals. So that's something I learned here at the Ann Wigmore Institute, to do more of the greens and to balance the fruit with the greens. And so typically I make green smoothies, as you know, a lot. And they have a lot of greens, and then a good amount of fruit and some seeds, like maybe some chia or flax, and that's just balances me really well. So are fruits evil? Well, maybe for some people they're not good, and I know people who we don't do well with fruits. So I would say it really depends on the person, your constitution, your upbringings, what you ate when you growing up, and so forth. So for some people, I would say fruit definitely should not be part of their diet, or maybe just small amounts and focusing more on the low glycemic and maybe berries and things like that, wild berries. And whereas for other people, like I see many people, people that are more active that burn their calories and the sugar better. For some people, I see it's a really fantastic food. So I'd say personally, it depends. And I kind of do a balance between fruits and greens, vegetables, and some nuts, and of course lots of sprouts and microgreens.
Wonderful, Kaelash. So my personal thoughts on fruit, number one, is that not all fruit is created equal. You know, I like kind of look at the nutrient density of fruit and how many nutrients in that fruit versus calories am I getting in that fruit. For example, wild blueberries have lots of nutrients and relatively lower calories than, say, something like bananas that have more calories, in my opinion, than nutrients. And I would rather drink a carrot juice instead of eat bananas. Link down below to that video. Because there's more nutrition and I'm all about nutrition. That being said, for many years, I have also eaten literally 2 meals of fruit a day and 1 meal of vegetables a day. And for me, that worked for many years when I was younger. And as I got more mature, I found that that did not work as good. So I had to modify my approach. So I think maybe when you're a little bit younger, you can handle the fruit. You're doing more physical activity. But even when I was younger, I probably should have included more vegetables because they have lots of nutrients that fruit don't. So, you know, it's a balancing act. I think in the end, I want you guys to balance out the fruits and the vegetables and get as many that you need to feel good. Link down below also in my video. You know, you need to ensure you get enough calories on a raw vegan diet if that is your goal. And, you know, many people may not eat enough fruits to get their calories. If they're entirely raw, they're not going to get them from something like, you know, steamed or pressure cooked, you know, starches or beans like I include in my diet these days. I typically drink 1 green juice a day, and that's in the morning. So I literally have 4 pounds of vegetables before I even eat anything most days. Many days I will also eat oatmeal with maybe a little bit of berries in there. But, you know, that's a more grain-based. So I could feed my microbiome with a lot of other prebiotic fibers. And then I might eat like a fruit meal for lunch. Like these days I'm having persimmons. And then for dinner, of course, I'll have like a huge baked salad. And, you know, so that's how I do it now. Of course, I think everybody needs to find their own balance. My personal opinion is eat as many vegetables as necessary as you possibly could fit in, because I see that as, you know, under-eating more than I see. You know, fruit is often overeaten in many raw food lifestyles.
So, John, what are your thoughts on cooked food? You mentioned cooked foods. Tell us more.
It's toxic. You shouldn't eat it. It's all poisoning. Just kidding. All right. So while I will agree that, you know, some raw vegans believe that all cooked food is toxic and bad, you know, my opinion now, after many years of living on a raw vegan diet, personally, is that, you know, there are plenty of cooked foods that are quite toxic. That toxins are produced in the cooking and heating process, right? You cook things too hot at a high temperature, over a barbecue, over a grill, even on your stove, bake it in the oven. It's just too hot. It's without moisture, and you're causing toxins to be created. So that is completely true. You know, I do not recommend microwaving. I do not recommend broiling, frying, you know, all these different ways that most people heat process their food. That being said, based on new, you know, microbiome research and getting resistant starches, and more importantly, diversifying your diet, including different foods that you may be restricted from, if you want to label yourself raw vegan. So I encourage you guys to move away from labels and better define what you're doing and why. And I heat process some foods now. You know, links down below, some videos where I will use the Instant Pot. It's the only way I heat process my food. So it's always done with moisture and the temperature remains under 148 degrees. So I don't create all those cooked food toxins that many raw vegans may speak about. In addition, as far as I'm aware, there's no leukocytosis caused by heating your food, keeping it at a low temperature when they are plant foods. Although if you cook and heat process animal products, you know, that will probably cause leukocytosis, as is, you know, heat processing and making junk food products. I only eat whole foods, you know, to enhance my raw vegan diet, and foods that generally I couldn't eat raw, or if heat processing my food allows me to eat more vegetables and maybe reduce the fruits, especially the vegetables that I grow at my house, I'm definitely going to do that. Of course, that being said, I always prefer to juice my vegetables, blend my vegetables, or eat them in salad greens. But if I have so many, and sometimes I just want to have some heat process, I'll do that also. So I always, you know, focus on raw foods. And of course here at and Wigmore. So here in Puerto Rico, I've been basically eating raw except for the first day or two that I brought a few heat processed foods from home. So what are your thoughts on cooked food, Kaelash? Toxic, bad, or what?
Well, I used to think it's toxic, and that was kind of my religion. I told everybody that cooked food is toxic and that they should be going raw. And, well, I was able to convert a few people and convince a few people, but most people were not too happy with my approach. I was a bit on the aggressive side, because when I discovered raw foods in the mid-90s, it was just like, to me, the solution to any health problem. That's what I thought.
A lot of people still promote that these days.
Yeah, so I did think it was the cure to, for all diseases. And my grandmother and my mother and my father and my school friends and my school teachers, they all heard that from me a lot. And at some point, they just didn't like hanging out with me because they didn't like how at breaks during school, I would walk up to my school teachers and tell them what they were eating was toxic and poisonous. And so I've learned a little bit. I was 18 years old back then. And now a few decades have passed, and my approach has also changed a little bit. And in fact, being raw was kind of my identity.
I know, yeah, my identity as well.
So, it was kind of a little challenging for me to
adjust.
And what happened really, I was raw, very strict for about 20 years, very, very strict. Like I said, it was my religion. And everybody knew what my religion was. And even everybody knew me like the one that only eats raw food. And I've lightened up a little bit. And basically a few things happened. Well, I had a son, and he likes to try some things that are not raw at the beginning. And he offered me things sometimes. Healthy things, maybe some steamed broccoli, some healthy food, vegan, healthy vegetables, basically.
And did you get poisoned? Did you pass out? Did you all of a sudden get all this mucus from steamed broccoli, Kaelash?
I didn't. I probably got more mucus and felt worse eating the nuts that are labeled raw, but they're not truly raw, And that raised the whole, dimension and thinking, what is better for you, the nuts that are labeled raw but that are not raw, or the steamed vegetables. And then I really started questioning the whole movement. And I felt like, in some ways, I started meeting all these people, so many raw fooders, they would prepare all these meals, and I would get sick a lot of the time.
Yeah, me too.
And I would go to a raw food restaurant, I would eat less raw than I'd eat at home. I still enjoyed the food.
Of course.
And definitely, it was great. It's like a feast, but I didn't feel very good. And I started questioning the movement, And then one incident here in Puerto Rico really kind of, I didn't get addicted to cooking.
Me neither. Yeah, of course.
But there was that concern, will I get sick? Will I throw up?
Yeah, will I just start eating cooked food for the rest of my life? But it's addictive, like a lot of raw vegans say.
So actually what happened in 2017, just after your visit here, Hurricane Maria passed to Puerto Rico and took down basically all fruit trees, and vegetables were just gone, and we couldn't even get stuff shipped for a while to Puerto Rico. And then at that moment, it wasn't so much about, finding raw food. At that moment, it was just about finding food. At all.
Yeah, and we don't get that because everybody has a grocery store they could go to any time of the year.
And so that opened up also another way of looking at food.
Like, how am I going to survive?
Exactly, because there wasn't anything fresh around. And then we didn't have water to even wash anything, or wash a cutting board, or a knife, or to flush a toilet. There was no light. There was no electricity. I couldn't use my blender for 3 years. I couldn't choose anything.
Wow.
So basically what we did, every day we had one meal. We went to a self-serve restaurant where they had fresh stuff. Like
salad bar.
Exactly. A salad bar where they had romaine lettuce, and they had the peas that were sure they cooked and foreign and not organic, not high quality, and they had some starches, you know. So I looked at everything. They had meat there. They had all kinds of things, a lot of unhealthy food. And I was looking at how can I eat somewhat healthy and still stay close to my beliefs.
Yeah, and keep your weight on. I mean, you can't just eat salads and gain weight, and they probably didn't have a whole lot of fruit.
They didn't have fruit there.
No fruit.
So just vegetables, and I started eating some starchy food that was not made in the instant.
And not as healthy as the ones that I eat these days, of course.
And I was a little concerned. Am I going to get addicted? Is this going to open a can of worms? Am I going to now want to eat cooked food all the time? Am I going to throw up? Am I going to get sick? And those things didn't happen. You know, I felt good. And, I mean, it was a blessing. I just was grateful that we had any food at all to eat and a place where we could wash our hands and use the toilet, you know, bathroom and things like that. So it was a pretty tough time. And now I eat. I mean, people that know me, they say, you're 99. You are still a raw figure. I say I'm not, because there's that maybe 5%. And like, it's not 100%. So people say, you're still 100%. I'm kind of 90%, 95, 99. Most days I am. I mean, you see me eat, I'm done pretty close to 100%.
Yeah.
Still. And I do make exceptions sometimes if things are offered to me, if they're in line with their vegetables, basically, that are prepared in a way that's acceptable to me. I did buy the Instant Pot. I used it a couple of times only, and then I like, you know, that's too much work, and I don't have space for the thing, and so I make smoothies. But at least my wife has the Instant Pot because she is vegetarian. He eats cooked food, and my son as well. So I'm basically back to smoothies. And once in a while, when my wife, when she offers me, I'm like, what do you want? She wants to prepare something for me. Sometimes go, there's a quote. Those purple potatoes, asparagus, those kind of things that I know can be beneficial for the microbiome. So I'm not addicted to it. Do I enjoy it sometimes? I do. Could I do without it? I could.
Yeah.
But I may not, because, you know, it's not my identity anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Kaelash. I mean, I very little cooked foods. I maybe eat 90%, maybe a little bit less. Depends on the day, you know. In the summertime, I'll probably eat less cooked foods. Wintertime, eating a little bit more. Plus, I'm also trying to really enhance my microbiome. And I identify as somebody who eats healthy. And that's the thing about me and the heat processed foods I choose to eat. They're super healthy, and I wouldn't otherwise be eating them raw, and they're for a specific purpose, for the phytonutrients, for specifically the fiber to build my microbiome. And my microbiome test was not as good as I'd like, and link down below to that video if you want to see it. All right, so Kaelash, since you've been working at the Ann Wigmore Institute since 1999, what are your thoughts on sprouts and microgreens?
You know, when I was an early teenager, I was 15 years old, actually. I was 15 years old. I was looking for a part-time job for the weekends because I was still in school, and my mom connected me with this man who was growing sprouts commercially for the big car makers like Mercedes-Benz. I was living in the south of Germany, and I didn't know anything about sprouts. I was a vegetarian, but I didn't know anything about sprouts, but I took the job. And I worked there for several years, and that's when I got into raw foods. And that's when I first heard about Ann Wigmore. And now, some decades later, I still sprout every day. So my job got me into sprouting. First, it was just a job, but then I learned about sprouting and then the benefits, and I felt it myself. So every weekend, I would take bags home of alfalfa sprouts and broccoli and some lentils and things like that. And then ever since, I'd become a passion of mine. I sprout because I know it's good for me and for my family, and I like to share the sprouts with others too. Usually grow more than I can eat. So, and I felt it on myself, my own body, and then I started reading about it, like, wow. And the company I was working with is called Magic Sprouts. The sprouts are magic, and that's one food I would recommend for everybody to eat more of. Really, sprouts, they're so easy to grow. You can grow them year-round in your apartment, in your house, and you just need to buy some viable seeds and start sprouting. Some only take a day, some may take a week. The salad sprouts take a little longer, but that's something that I think everybody could benefit from, eating more sprouts and microgreens as well, like the sunflower, the buckwheat, and all those different colored microgreens like the amaranth, the cabbage, the kale, and whatnot. I think that's the food of the present and the food of the future.
Wonderful, Kaelash. So my take on sprouts and microgreens is, I wish I was good at growing sprouts and microgreens as Kaelash. I need to take some lessons from this guy. I know how to grow them, of course, and I do sprouts irregularly in my house, maybe like once every, week or so. I will make some sprouts, usually buckwheat sprouts. I may need to be sprouting more. I'm always so busy doing other things. And of course, I have an outdoor garden where I grow most of my food. And it's just the extra thing. I could probably do sprouting, but then microgreens, which I consider sprouts maybe a little bit better than microgreens because they're easier to grow also. But microgreens are also very excellent. They're super nutritious, power-packed, in some ways even healthier than vegetables I grow outside, and that you guys could grow them anywhere. And one of my goals, of course, is to eat more sprouts and microgreens, and hopefully when I have a property next to Kaelash, he'll be the designated sprout and microgreens grower, and I'll be the extra eater when he has extra.
I'd be happy to. And I see you more like an outdoor garden expert, and I see myself more as an indoor garden expert growing sprouts, microgreens.
So yeah, we make a great team. I'll grow the outside stuff, you grow the inside stuff, and we'll be doing good. So yeah, find a good friend that grows outdoor and indoor and do the opposite.
So John, do you think salt is healthy?
Salt. Well, I have a video that says salt is not a health food. Whether it is iodized salt, salty sea salt, salt from Himalayas, salt from the bottom of the sea, salt from Hawaii, salt from the Baja Peninsula, wherever the salt is from, in my opinion, it is not a health food. Because number one, it's not a food, it's literally a mined mineral that you add to food. And people say, oh, salt's good from the Himalayas because it has all these trace minerals. But if you look at the breakdown, it's like 90% sodium and a small percentage of other contaminant trace minerals. So I do not believe, salt is a healthy food to eat. Most people oversalt their food. And, while it is true that we need sodium in our diets, we don't necessarily need to get it from salt. I like to and prefer to get my sodium from the foods. That being said, I do use some products that contain small amounts of salt, such as low sodium miso, for example, that has some sodium. But the main benefit of the miso, of course, is it's a fermented food, and it does happen to have some salt. Of course, if you eat sauerkraut, it may also be coming with salt unless you make it yourself. You could exclude the salt. And, for trace minerals, I prefer to eat something like seaweed, dulse, kelp, or any of the other kind of seaweeds that I eat. I get a 6 seaweed mix, so I have a spectrum of different seaweeds because every different seaweed has different levels of minerals and trace minerals in there. As well as I also enrich my garden with salt or, trace minerals from the ocean, as well as things like rock dust, so I can get my minerals from the food instead of from salt.
Well, I agree with what you said. I personally don't consider salt to be healthy either. And I realized that for most of my life, until I went to raw foods, that I was very addicted to salt. And it was quite difficult for me actually to let go of some of the salt. And fortunately, I found seaweed, primarily dulse, that I use in my personal life and we use at the N. Wigmore Institute. Dulse has become something that I eat daily. I love it in my salads and energy soup that I make. And kelp too. I like kelp. I know some people don't like kelp. They say it's too fishy, and I joke. Well, the kelp is not fishy. The fish is kelpy.
Yeah, because the fish eat kelp, right, Kaelash?
Yeah.
The kelp doesn't eat the fish.
I love kelp. I love dulse. And so, of course, if I don't rinse my dulse, if I use the flakes or if I use the granules, there's salt mixed into that. So I'm not 100% salt free if I eat some dulse and some kelp because the sea salt is kind of mixed into it. I thought it was very strict, in which I have been. I used to get just a whole leaf dulse and always soak it to wash away most of the salt. And I actually did a little experiment at some point. I tried eating my meals without dulse or kelp or anything salty, and I felt something big was missing because this salt addiction was still there. It was just shifted to something healthier. And then for a while it went without any seaweed just to test myself to see if I'd be able to enjoy the food even without the saltiness from the seaweed. To a point that I did, and I think my taste buds recovered or changed. And then I started introducing the seaweed back in because I know it has a lot of benefits, a lot of the minerals. So I started adding it back in, but I wanted to really see, could I be without salt at all? And it was a challenge. It was quite a challenge. It was more challenging for me than going off fruit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, trace minerals are essential to our diets. Now, these days, I will say, I use a product called Fit Salt. Actually, it's from France, and it's basically a potassium salt. So there's zero sodium in there. And the bigger issue with salt is that there's a sodium-potassium pump in our bodies and all the cells. We need to have the right ratio of sodium to potassium. And most Americans, have way too much sodium and too little potassium. So actually, I have the Fit Salt from France. It has potassium, there's lysine, some other things in there to kind of, up my potassium game a little bit. So when I do eat some sodium in the low sodium miso or, from celery juice that I might drink, a quart of every day, I got enough potassium. Of course, I'm also getting potassium from many of my other foods that I'm eating.
And I've been influenced, of course, by hygiene. Those were the first books that I read and the first teachers I had in raw foods, and they don't use salt. And then in Weight War, only uses the seaweed. So I've been influenced strongly by hygiene and the Weight War movement. And since both don't really promote using isolated salt, that helped me, of course, to get rid of or let go of all the salt.
Excellent points, Kaelash. So, Kaelash, is oil, like extracted oil, healthy or not?
Well, in most cases, almost all cases, I would say it's not healthy. We know now that the omega-6s are so high in almost all vegetable oils. And it's a food, if you can call it food. It's an oil that's stripped of basically all of its nutrients. You just need to look at any oil bottle or jar, and it says basically zero for everything. It only says 100% one thing, which of course is fat. And a tablespoon of oil has, he used to say 108 calories, now it says 120 calories. It doesn't matter, it's over 100 calories. And it's just a lot of calories from straight fat. And most people don't do like a tablespoon on their salad. They go like this a few times and then added a few hundred calories from fat to their salads and to whatever it is that they're eating. So yes, there could be some benefits to certain oils, flax with the omega-3s, and there being a better ratio between 3s and 6s. But I believe a lot of vegetarians are out of balance, especially the omegas, because they use all those vegetable oils, which creates a really big imbalance. And so focusing more on the omega-3s, most people will have to let go of the vegetable oils. And so I personally don't use any extracted oils. Well, pretty much. I don't ingest any, I should say, because I do use some coconut oil on my skin sometimes. So that's also in line with natural hygiene and with the Whitmore teachings, where we don't use any extracted oil. Yes, I use oil from the nuts, of course, and avocado. I eat avocado many days a week, and chia and flax. So I'm looking for the oil more from the whole foods rather than the extracted food. And I know a lot of people, raw or not, vegetarian or vegan or keto, whatever, a lot of people, they like olive oil.
Yeah.
A lot of people, and I kind of see a little bit as a blessing. I never liked olive oil very much. I never liked oils very much. So that was an easy one. I grew up eating oils for my salads with my family, but giving up oil was quite easy for me.
Yeah, I've run the gamut. When I first got into raw foods, I would use raw organic olive oil, biryani, cold pressed, totally raw, legit stuff. And then I got out of oils, kind of going more natural hygiene, plus it's mainly the high calorie thing. And I was taught that oils are not good for anything. I pretty much never even eat flax oil because I prefer to eat flax seeds, much like Kaelash. Then later on in my career, actually just within the last year or two, I actually ended up buying some biryani olive oil again due to the high polyphenol content. That being said, I can't get all of polyphenols from the olives, also olive leaves. But, I found that including a little bit of olive oil on some occasions, I get actually eat less overall of other foods because it is higher calorie. So, I use a little bit. I could go through like 1 whole liter bottle. It might take me 3 months to 6 months to go through a whole liter bottle. So I'm using very little. Sometimes, it just adds a nice flavor to my salad. And, I kind of like, variety these days is another thing I've learned. I will make rarely flax oil. Actually, to make flax oil, I basically press my own flax seeds in a cold press juicer, the Santa 727 with the oil extractor designed in Europe. And I've tested it with the heat gun. It's on my Instagram if you guys want to see it. It keeps it raw. And that flax oil tastes like no other bottled oil you guys are ever going to taste if you want the highest quality. That being said, it's a pain in the butt to kind of make. And I don't really use oil a lot. But it is kind of nice when I want to do that. And the other oil I take these days is actually in a supplement form. It's actually DHA EPA oil, which is in very small quantities because it's just in little capsules that I could have pre-formed, the most essential omega-3 fats, which is the DHA and EPA that I believe can be important for future brain health, as my dad does have Alzheimer's. And that is not a fun disease to get. So I want to do everything I can to prevent cognitive decline in the future. And I believe, it can be beneficial. That being said, I have other raw food friends. I believe if you eat enough flax and, and enough omega-3s, you can probably convert and have the DHA, EPA. That being said, my personal belief is that I want to supplement, and I do supplement that on regular occasion, usually daily, except, of course, I've been traveling for the last week and a half where I haven't taken it at all.
I want to say one thing. I don't like olive oil very much, but I discovered olives.
Yes.
And so I'm getting high quality olives, and I really like adding those to my salads.
Wonderful. Yes. I get raw, unpasteurized olives that are fermented from Greece, actually, and they're quite good. I'll have to bring some next trip, Kaelash.
So, John, what are your thoughts on taking supplements?
Supplements. You should not avoid them. They're bad. You can get everything you need from the food. So, that's what I used to think. And in an ideal world, that would be possible. And these days the food system is not as pure or as clean as it used to be. There's nutrients that are not in food. A lot of people live too far north. They don't get enough sun to create vitamin D. As a matter of fact, I'm one of those people, despite, coming to Puerto Rico. I've gotten my blood test before I come to Puerto Rico and after. And of course, after I leave Puerto Rico, my vitamin D levels are sufficient. But then even in the summertime where I live, my vitamin D levels were not sufficient. So I started supplementing regularly because I've always been an irregular supplementer. But I'm understanding now how they are so important. So these days I take a vitamin called Complement. I'll link down below to that video where you can see my blood test where I, prove to myself that the Complement, taking the supplement with some trace minerals, vitamin B12, vitamin D, as well as the, preformed DHA and EPA, increased my B12 and vitamin D status. Actually, before this trip, I got another blood test, and my B12 is now where I want it to be. I think it was like around 1,000 or 1,200. So really feeling comfortable with that because for my whole career as an irregular raw vegan non-supplementer for the most part, my B12 has always been a bit low in range maybe, but then my homocysteine has always been a bit high, and I really want to drive that homocysteine lower, and I believe the weak link was the B12. That being said, I do take other supplements actually. I take enzyme supplement, I take prebiotic supplements, I take some probiotic supplements, I take random different herbs sometimes for allergies, and my goal is to not take preformed vitamins. Most of the supplements I take are like herbs that are just ground up and put into a capsule for the most part. I take something for like allergies, which is quercetin, which is found in many foods, but they basically just concentrate it and put in a little capsule for me to take. So, I'm not completely against supplements. That being said, there are so many supplements that I think people get scammed on and that, people don't need if they ate properly. So to me, a supplement should supplement your diet and not supplant or take place of eating a good diet. Oh, I eat McDonald's, so I'm going to eat a supplement. No, eat really good as you can. If there's a few things missing or you need additional support for some certain challenges you have, I think they can be beneficial. That being said, I think many people maybe take too many supplements and put too much faith in supplements. So, these days I'm having more of a balanced approach, taking the supplements I feel work for me, and sometimes I'll get rid of some and add some new ones, but for the most part, I try to get my nutrients from food.
Yeah, same here. Of course, I've been influenced by the hygiene movement and weight walk, where supplements are a big no-no. And I started taking a B12 supplement when my B12 levels were a little low. And then I had my B12 tested again. It went up really fast and too high. So I had to stop taking it. That was a few years ago. In the past, I took some vitamin D3 as well. Those are the two. And then what I have at home is the complement that you mentioned. I don't take it regularly. I throw it in my smoothie, which maybe once a week or not even. So once in a while, I put it in my smoothie. And the other, which you may or may not consider a supplement, is the vitamin green, which I also add to my smoothie once in a while. So not strictly. And as far as I know, I'm not deficient of anything. However, I should get myself tested again, make sure that that's still true. So yes, similar beliefs. I think I take less than you.
Absolutely.
But I'm more open to them than I used to be. I was quite close to supplements, and I told everybody, you get everything from your food. You don't need any supplements. And now I'm just more open to the possibility that some people would thrive if they took certain supplements, and especially to older age. You mentioned your dad with
Alzheimer's.
And my grandfather also, he had Alzheimer's. He passed away a few years ago, or 95 years. And he probably would have benefited from certain supplements.
And other lifestyle practices.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes.
And I don't consider vitamin mineral green a supplement because basically for the most part that is a whole food powder. They just add a lot of different nutritious foods together. So, you could still remain, whole food plant-based and eat, certain plant foods. Like if you want a protein, I consider a protein powder where they have isolated pea protein a supplement, whereas I would say things like spirulina, chlorella, and even things like lentil powder, which is basically powdered whole duckweed powder, would be a whole food. So, then that would not be considered a supplement in my book. All right, Kaelash, so I want to ask you about a very important topic, fitness, because I know, you're the yoga master over here, yoga teacher, trainer, and, into all these things, and you're out surfing pretty much every day in the ocean and all these things. Yeah. Good or bad?
It is something I could not imagine my life without. It is the first thing I do in the morning. I do my yoga practice, waking up at 4:30 so I can do it before I teach my first yoga class at 6:30 in the morning. And so I start my day with it. I personally practice about 20-25 minutes regularly every morning, yoga. And then throughout the day, I do usually sports that are fun for me. So fitness is kind of almost like a byproduct of a lot of the things that I like to do, such as windsurf, kite surf, stand-up paddle, and snorkeling, swimming, body surfing. We're here in the Caribbean, the ocean's just outside. It's a great place for those sports. So I think it's essential, and I see people in the raw food movement. Also, I see people in other movements that say all you need to do is eat well, and your exercise, your fitness is really secondary. You get healthy just by eating well. And then I see it the other way around too. People say all you need to do is exercise, and it doesn't matter what you eat. You burn through all the junk. And so I believe both are very important, exercise and also what you eat. I believe they're both essential. And so I believe for the most part for myself, the exercise I do is because it makes me just feel amazing. So I love it. Like yesterday, started the day I'm thinking, what's missing today? I felt something was, and then I went surfing and that's what was missing, and being out there. And I love sports, and I recommend you do sports or top forms of exercise that you love doing, be dancing or kayaking or bicycling or something where the exercise is it just happens. You do something you love, and at the same time, you happen to be exercising, but you're not doing for the sake of exercise. And this, with weights, I do have weights at home. I've lifted weights, and I know light weights, lots of repetition is good for me, and I like to do it during the off season when there's no waves or no wind, and to keep fit, for the season again. And it just takes a lot more motivation, a lot more discipline, a lot more to get myself to doing weights. And I know some people love it, and that's great. And I love sports like ping pong too, where I used to play tennis, that are where I move my body without thinking, this is exercise, I gotta exercise. And with yoga too, it's just getting down on the floor and moving in the morning, it feels incredible, it feels amazing. And I don't even think of it as exercise. So fitness, that was the question. Very important, it's very important for posture, for musculoskeletal system. It's very important for endorphins. When we exercise, we move our joints, we move the lymph, and there's synovial fluid released into the joints, and also endorphins. So that it makes us feel happy when we move. I prefer to call it something, move than exercise. Exercise a little bit,
like work.
And
like work.
You need the clothes, the special clothes, and the whatnot. Whereas moving is sounds more like fun, something you're more drawn to. Just like kids, infants and after, they don't think of what they're doing as exercise. They just love to climb. They just love to run. They just love to do what they're doing. And they're moving all the time, Well, now with screens, smartphones, and tablets and computers, unfortunately, less and less than in the past when we were kids, growing up and just being
without screens and tablets, not iPhones.
Absolutely, yes. So I hope that the new generation will be empowered to exercise and motivated to exercise more. How about you? What's your take on fitness, exercise?
Fitness is super critical, super important for your health. It is just one of the pillars of health, in my opinion. And, my personal thoughts is that, I hate gyms. I probably will never go to a gym. Will never have a gym membership. I really don't like lifting weights. I think it's kind of lame and stupid myself. But my personal opinions on exercise and being in shape is, within my normal daily activities to get exercise, out gardening. I'm lifting up 40-pound bags of rock dust, right? I'm spinning my compost tumbler, that's 100 pounds. I have a video on all the, exercise and fitness I get during gardening. Link down below to that, where I actually have a fitness expert come over, and he's like, John, you're working your craft. John, you're working this, you're working that. Even just using the clippers, and I'm using this, and I'm increasing my grip strength. That being said, I definitely need to get more, exercise and fitness into my life. And hopefully when I'm living next to Kaelash, we will be doing a lot more things. Like just the other day, this is how I think of fitness. Like to me, Kaelash was like, hey, let's go walk around our properties. The property he owns, the properties that I may be owning next to him, hopefully, knock on wood, in the future. And we literally hiked from one property through his property to the other property and then back. And we had to cut through the forest, push down weeds, duck underneath trees, break some trees, step over them, dodge the spiders and the spider webs, and cross the stream and jump over rocks along the stream to get to the next rock and not fall into the water, and go up on that bank. And then the hill is steep, and now we have to balance and not slip and slide down the hill and break your arm. And this is the kind of exercise I get excited about and I love. And this is what I want to do in my life. When I go to Costco, I don't get a shopping cart to push the shopping cart to get stuck behind everybody. It's so inefficient. I'll grab a super huge box. I'll just fill my box with all the stuff, and I'll carry it, in Dodge shopping carts to like, get in line faster, check out faster, and carry it out to the car. And I get exercise when I'm, hauling my produce. When I go to the produce terminal in LA, I'll carry 4 boxes of romaine lettuce to the car, and that's when I get my really exercise. That's like weight training to me is like just doing everyday work. And I mean, in some of the blue zones of the world, they don't go to gyms, guys. They actually have to walk up and down their hills, go to the local town to get their stuff, garden in their garden. I mean, that's to me is exercise. Of course, I do have a standing bike, a recumbent bike, actually, that I'm standing, not recumbent, but it's just a bike that you stand on and pedal. It's really cool. I love that. In the summertime, hopefully in the spring now, I get to go on my 5-mile morning bike ride, which I do most mornings, and I need to incorporate that again. I'll kind of take it off. The winter time, it's a bit colder, but yeah, I need to get back into that and definitely do more fitness. That's one of the areas that I also need to improve on because I'm not perfect as much as I get a lot of walking and exercise, and I try to park far away when I'm going to the stores, and I park under the shade, which is far away because nobody wants to walk. Everybody tries to get a close spot. I'll walk a little bit more when I go to the hotel. I'll carry my bags up the, stairs instead of taking the elevator unless I have too much to carry up the stairs. When I go down, from the hotel, I'll take the stairs down instead of taking the elevator. So I try to incorporate a lot more movement and fitness into my daily life versus going to a gym. So yeah, that's my thoughts, Skylar.
And that reminds me also, which I never thought of as exercise. When I was a kid, I rode my bike to school.
Oh yeah, I did too.
Half an hour, and when I was living in Santa Rosa, I rode my bike to Rona Park. That's State University.
That's a nice
and I rode it a little bit up and down.
Yes.
So that was for 50 minutes.
Yes.
And I didn't think of it as exercise. I just thought of, I need to get there somehow. And rather than taking a bus, being in Germany or in Sonoma County, I'm like, let's ride the bike. So
yeah. So yeah, trying to incorporate exercise into your daily life versus, thinking of it as a chore, but, a means to do things and to, live things and to get places.
I want to add too that rebounding is excellent.
Yes.
Getting those mini trampolines. We do that at Wavemore. They're everywhere, those rebounders. And that's a really good form of exercise for your lymphatic system, also your musculoskeletal system. I highly recommend that. And you can do that, winter, summer, at any time in your apartment. And we're talking about these, either round or different shape rebounder that you bounce on. You don't have to jump very much. It's just that balance that activates your lymphatic system and beyond. It's such a great form of indoor exercise.
Yeah, and especially if you don't really exercise a lot now, you need to kind of start somewhere. I believe that's an excellent way because it's really low impact, and you don't even gotta jump. You can just sit on it and just move yourself up and down a little bit and start out with a minute or two. I mean, I did probably like 15 minutes the other day, just no problem. But start where you're at. I mean, literally.
We talked about oils earlier. What about nuts? What do you think about nuts?
Nuts. Oh, nuts. No. Nuts and seeds are amazing foods, in my opinion. They are whole food sources of not only fat, but also fiber, as well as phytonutrients. There's lots of studies that show that, nuts can increase your lifespan. And these are the studies that I believe versus some of the dogma out there that overt fats are bad or, that being said, you want to not overeat nuts. I've had raw food friends that are just buying a whole pound of cashews and just start shoveling it in, and now you ate a whole pound of cashews for your calories, which has a lot more calories than vegetables and fruits, but not as much as the same quantity of foil, of course. But the problem is when you eat too many nuts, you're eating less of other things that are healthier, such as sprouts, microgreens, leafy greens, and other vegetables. And maybe even you're overeating nuts and you're not eating enough fruits or other full plant foods, right? So that's my personal opinions. Find the nuts that work best for you. My goal is to have a diversity of nuts. And of course, I have a video on nuts on this YouTube channel. Link down below that. I believe the best way to purchase your nuts are in the shell because that is nature's packaging to prevent rancidity, prevent them from going bad. They store longer, and more importantly, when you guys buy nuts in the shell, it will significantly slow you down on how fast you can eat them. Especially if you're making dressings. You're not going to open one extra nut more than you need because you're sitting there cracking open my hand, and it could be a pain in the butt.
So I know I overeat on nuts when I first got into raw foods.
I think we all did, you know.
You know, I was the guy who ate too many cashews every day. So it was really mostly nuts and fruits.
Dried fruits. I had dried fruits. Nuts. So it's fun.
Me as well. And the vegetables were kind of like, yeah, maybe a salad later. And yeah, sure, I'll have my salad. But the go-to foods were nuts and fruits and a lot dates. You
Got dates. Gotta love your dates.
So many dates in my life. Now I'm just a little bit better. And say with nuts too, I used to eat too many nuts. And now probably don't eat enough nuts. They kind of shifted. However, I do blend my nuts. I activate them or soak them, even if they're not truly raw, which I know some aren't. Some almonds that I have and some Brazil nuts that I have, they're not truly raw, but I still like to soak them to increase the water content before I eat them. Sure, there's no chemical reaction anymore because they're dead, but adding more waters, they also blend better. So anyway, so I suggest, and what I do is soaking nuts and blending them or processing them into a pate because it makes them much easier digestible. And I do believe nuts have especially minerals and good fats too that are important for our nervous system and for our brain central nervous system. So I'm not opposed to them. I think the question is really eating the right amount. And the right amount will vary depending on how active you are. I believe in whatever else. If you eat lots of avocado, then, you know, that's a lot of fat already. If you don't eat a lot of avocado, maybe eating more nuts could be helpful. You know, balance, finding the balance, like with so many things, is the key. With nuts as well.
Yeah, I think a good guideline that I like to use is basically a handful, and I'm generous some days, and I get 2 handfuls of nuts total or seeds. You know, I don't really soak mine, so I need to start doing that more. But I'm still last minute, always just throwing stuff in the blender, and I generally always blend my nuts. Although sometimes I like to just have a few nuts for dessert after dinner, just crack them one at a time and just eat them and enjoy them, you know, slowly and mindfully.
And coconut meat, that's a nut too, kind of. Well, it's a drupe, but
yeah,
we call it a nut.
It would be considered a nut, whole food source of fat.
So I like once in a while blending some coconut meat into my smoothies. And do you have any thoughts on the use of coconut meat or coconut oil?
Yeah, so these days I'm actually restricting my coconut meat and coconut oil due to some recent blood tests I got, and my cholesterol was a little bit too high, likely caused from the saturated fat in the coconut. My triglycerides were also a bit high, but then I basically cut and nixed out all coconut products out of my life, and then it went back into the normal position, or where they should be. So I believe that I may not handle them as well as some other people. So you might want to be aware about this. Of course, many nuts have saturated fat, but coconuts happen to be, you know, some of the highest, along with other, you know, things like palm oils have lots of the saturated fats, which, you know, can be important to have in the right balance. And of course, some people may process it, you know, better or worse, depending also on, you know, what you're eating as well.
So your website is discountjuicers.com, right?
Yes.
So you've got to be juicing a lot. What do you think about juicing?
Juicing, my honest opinion on juicing is the best juicers we have are our teeth. And actually, since I'm, you know, at the end, Wheatgrass Institute, I encourage people before they blended wheatgrass up with water to try to simulate making a juice. Basically, you're watering down your juice when you add water. I just tell people, cut the wheatgrass, put it in your mouth, chew it up, and spit out the pulp and suck the juice out of the wheatgrass. And we can do that with any fruit or vegetable, of course, but also you can just chew up the food and swallow it. That being said, I will also say that there are pros and cons to, you know, every different method of eating the food. So I would refrain from saying juicing is always better than vacuum blended smoothies or better than eating food. And my personal opinion is now that it depends on the specific food and you, and if you're eating that food or not. You know, I'd much rather juice carrots than cook them, of course, and I would much rather juice carrots than, you know, just eat them raw, like just out of hand. But, you know, that's me. And also some studies show that with juicing, you can, you know, speed up the absorption and increase the absorption of certain, you know, nutrients that are more available when they're juiced, such as the beta carotene in carrots. You know, so in general, I drink, you know, at least a quart, generally 2, sometimes 3 quarts of juice a day. For the most part, they are vegetable-based juices containing little fruit. I'm not a big fan of juicing fruit these days. Link down below to the video that I made. It says do this, or don't do this if you're juicing fruit, which is my tips on juicing fruits. I believe that there are some benefits to removing some of the fiber, but I think some people could take it overboard and just live on juice for a whole year. And, that's a little bit excessive. I'm definitely not a fan of, prolonged or extended juice fasts or juice feasts, because I believe you may be restricting the amount of foods and the types of foods and fiber you're feeding your microbiome. Of course, that being said, if juicing will allow you to eat more, especially the leafy green vegetables and the vegetables than you would otherwise eat, I am all for it, because I'm a big fan of including more vegetables and leafy greens in people's diets. And, I see a lot of people in raw foods that are primarily fruitarian or eat mostly fruits, and I believe they could benefit from drinking green juices. The standard American, basically less than 10% of them eat the appropriate recommended a dismal amount of vegetable servings a day, and if they could start drinking vegetable juices to double or triple their vegetable consumption, I think that's great. So, I think juices, can play a part in a healthy diet. You shouldn't drink a lot, you shouldn't drink too little, and, you definitely could absorb some nutrients better in the juice form, and more importantly, it allows you to concentrate the amount and the volume of vegetables you could eat, especially the leafy greens.
Well, you're the juicing expert.
Yes.
And that's probably also one little difference we have. Like, you lean more toward juicing, I lean more toward blending, which we're going to
vacuum, I think.
Vacuum blending now that I've learned about that from you. I drink probably one juice every single day, but I don't make juices very often. And when I do, it's mostly vegetable juices, maybe watermelon juice. All other vegetables and fruits, like the vegetable juice would be like cucumber and celery and lettuce and maybe sunflower microgreens, maybe some parsley, things like that. So that's kind of my typical green juice. And I used to make that religiously every single day. And then afterward, I was so hungry, then I had to eat something. And then at some point, I just kind of made a smoothie and put a lot of things I put in the juice in a soup, and then other things in my green smoothies. Been leaning more toward blending. I'm not opposed to juicing at all. It's just I find myself not juicing very much because it's it's a lot of work. But with a vacuum, I must say the vacuum juicing for me just makes it a lot easier. Putting everything into the blender, blending it under vacuum, and then straining it. That is something I've really becoming more friendly with than using my Omega juicer, which I love, but it just seems like a lot of time and standing there when my son helps me. It's helpful, but at the vacuum blending and then straining, it just I find that to be a lot easier. And so green juices, I do drink a green juice pretty much every day, and once in a while some watermelon juice, and then here and there something else, maybe some apple juice that I made. Maybe the other day that carrot, apple, ginger, that was excellent. I love that. That was a lot and fun and tasted great. But you made it. I don't know if I would. So that's great. And we influence each other in that way, positive.
Yeah, Kaelash is the blending master, so he's going to make the smoothies and I'll make the juices. So it's like, I wish he was a girl. And he was single, but not.
Yeah, that was kind of some fun, actually. So I'll talk a little about blending.
Yeah, let's talk what are our opinions on blending, and then we'll get into vacuum blending separately.
So over the last few days, basically, you Kaelash, make the blend something. And then I go, John, you do something. So it's worked out me. All the things that we have been complimenting each other
in many ways, besides playing and juicing also.
So that's great fun. So I started blending. I got my first Vitamix in the year, I believe 2000, maybe 2001, and have been blending pretty much every day since I got that. And then just a few years ago, I got introduced to the vacuum blending idea, and still blending, but now a different dimension with just more concentrated colors and flavors and And as I learned from you, 3 times more nutrients,
Certain nutrition soups.
certain nutrients. And so I certainly have not stopped blending. So what I do every day, I eat blended food. Be it at the Gut Microbiome Institute, the energy soup, be it at home. I love making green smoothies. When I'm not eating at the Gut Microbiome Institute, I would make a big green smoothie in the morning. That would be my breakfast, my lunch, my snack in the afternoon, and then I might have a salad in the evening. So it's also so convenient. We talked about fitness earlier. I'd make that big smoothie. It might take me an hour from beginning to end, washing everything, vegetables, fruits, and so forth, and then blending and washing everything after, and putting it in the vacuum. I like to put it in a bunch of 8-ounce vacuum mason jars, vacuum sealed, and then I'd go windsurf. I spent the day out. I'd go to the beach for windsurfing or surfing or both, and in my cooler, I have all those vacuum sealed containers with smoothies in them. And it's just, people talk about fast food being the unhealthy food in the fast food restaurant. This to me is also like a form of healthy fast food. I'm driving to where I'm going to go windsurfing. I have the mason jar in my car and I'm drinking while I'm on my way there. And then during a break, I take out the next jar, I drink it. It's just like, and then afterward, on my way back, I drink another jar and then maybe another one, and then I'll have my salad. And it's just so convenient, packed with nutrients. That's how I get my complement in. That's how I get clove, the little dry.
Yes, very high antioxidant.
Into my blend, and sometimes the raw cacao, just a little bit of the fresh one, and things that I wouldn't eat otherwise, I put into my blender. And lots and lots and lots of greens, like a huge amount of greens and a good amount of food to make it taste amazing and delicious. And then, doing all the exercise I like to, and sometimes there's injuries and things, or whole injuries coming back. So adding some turmeric, some ginger, and adding some flax or chia also seems to help keep the pain, inflammation down. And even when there is something I heal a lot more quickly when I focus on those. And purslane would be another one, on those anti-inflammatory foods. So it's hard for me to imagine my life without blending it. It's like, the other day I was thinking, if at some point I didn't have teeth anymore, not really such a big deal, because I'm so used to eating blended food, and be it energy soup or smoothies. I have teeth for a while to eat some of the great fruits and nuts that I love.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think another thing, if I did live in Puerto Rico, Kaelash, because buying organic food is actually quite difficult and expensive here, I probably wouldn't be juicing as much, because I get an abundance of vegetables and things at produce terminals and, other places near me. And I have a full garden in my backyard. I have lots of things I could juice. But, here in Puerto Rico, it's a little more challenging. So I could see, definitely could make more dollars and cents to do blending, because you're using the whole food instead of, extracting out some of the fiber. So the other thing I want to ask you, Kaelash, is about the vacuum blending. Since I know you've been blending for a long time now, that just a few years ago, I introduced you to the vacuum blending, and a lot of my viewers still just have a Vitamix or a blend tech without, and they're not vacuum blending yet because they don't really think it makes a big difference. So in your own words, explain some of the things you observed and tasted or whenever, doing traditional blending for all these years, almost every day, and now that you're vacuum blending still every day, what differences have you seen between the two methods?
By the way, I still use my Vitamix, but it's just the motor base, which I use. And then I have a blending jar and the pump, which I use on the Vitamix motor base. So if you do have that, you sell the BioChef.
Yes.
The
Boyd system. Yeah, set up, for vacuum blending. Links down below to those videos if I remember.
So when I noticed it was kind of like, when I started in 95, I had this very cheap blender, and the blades were just down there, and it was like a funnel, and I turned the blender on and the food would just swirl around in circles, and once in a while maybe the blades would hit it a little bit, it would cut it, and then I'd drink it, it'd be all chunky and things weren't broken down very well. And then the Vitamix was like, wow, this is just, it's not a blender. This was
next level.
Next level. So I fell in love with the Vitamix, you know, and I'm like, never again wanted to use that other type of blender. So from the Vitamix and then to vacuum blending was like a whole nother dimension, whole nother step forward. I'm kind of very picky of the food that I blend. If I have it, let's say I blend in the morning and then I'd have it in the evening, be like, oh, it just doesn't taste right. And I rarely would prepare anything in the morning and then still have it even later in the day because it didn't taste right. And with the vacuum blending, food just lasts and tastes good so much longer. The flavors are better, and I know there's the research that shows it's more nutritious. I don't know, I don't feel it. But just the flavor and the texture too, it's just more compact. It's a huge, and then I went back to visit my family in Germany in June, and well, they have a Vitamix, but without the vacuum treatment. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is such a big step back. Things didn't taste as good, didn't taste right, and nothing lasted for very long. And then coming home and it's like, here, I'll back up my vacuum carafe and cup again. And finally, yes, I got my blender here again. So to me, it makes a huge difference. I would not want to go back to regular blending at all at this stage, no.
Yeah, I mean, what my friend says that once you go back, you never go back.
No, no.
And then Kaelash says something he just taught me really cool. Like when you add water to your smoothies, you water your smoothies down because you're adding water. Now there's less of other nutrients. But when you guys are blending traditionally in a Vitamix or Blendtec or even other blender, you're basically airing up your smoothie because you could start with this much, and when you blend it, it adds air, and now you have extra air. So you're also diluting your smoothies. And when you dilute your smoothies with air, it breaks down faster, and that's why it oxidizes quicker. That's why it does not store as much. And when it oxidizes faster, that's oxidizing some of those valuable nutrients as well.
So John, what is this?
What is that? I mean, you should know, Kaelash. You live here in Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico is probably the best place in America to grow that fruit, which is
Cacao.
cacao. Yes, the cacao fruit. So yes, this is the cacao fruit that many of you guys may have never seen before. You know, I visited a cacao farm just yesterday. Link down below the video, and that's how you guys could buy cacao fruit shipped directly to your door and support American, Puerto Rican farmers here and help them recover from the hurricane and build the cacao industry. And you know, the thing about this fruit is that most people, when they think cacao, they just think the cacao seeds or the cacao beans, which is basically like a nut. It's a cacao nut. It's high in fat. You have some theobromine, magnesium, and other things in there. Caffeine also has polyphenols that the research have shown can be quite beneficial, maybe effective against Alzheimer's potentially, feed your microbiome, and be good for you. But more importantly, if we open up this fruit, you know, you would actually see that there's actually a fruit pith on there that actually covers this part, and that's in the video link down below, that you could suck off the fruit. And that is my favorite part of the cacao, Kaelash, because that contains like some nice sugar. Kind of reminds me of like, I don't know, kind of like a soft, lychee-ish, sweet, a little bit tart. Like it is a delicious fruit. There's not a lot of fruit pulp on there. This morning, actually, I mixed up the cacao fruit with the bean with coconut water to make a nice cacao drink. So I think this fruit can be amazing. That being said, I think most people eat the cacao in this form and they overeat it. They eat chocolate bars that may have milk that have added sugar, and then it's just simply not healthy. In addition, many people into the raw foods, they basically take cacao and add it into their smoothie each and every day. You know, and then I think that if you're eating cacao every day, you're probably overdoing it because it could be somewhat of a stimulant. While it does have some nutrients in there, I think it can be easily overdone. And I encourage diet diversity. You know, when I do have a property here in Puerto Rico, while I will be growing the cacao fruit, I'll be mostly using the fruit itself and maybe drying the bean and exporting that and selling it to other people, you know, so that they could get the benefits, you know, in moderation. You know, when I first got into raw foods, I was into cacao. I learned about it more than I was against cacao based on maybe natural hygiene principles. And nowadays I've come around because I've looked at some of the scientific published studies on the polyphenols in the cacao and how it can be so beneficial. That being said, you know, everybody always wants to make the food good or bad. John eats cacao, good or bad? You know, and you know, here's the thing. Most things in life are not just good or it's not bad. It's somewhere in between. So I think I don't want to say eat cacao in moderation, because what moderation is to one person is not to the other. I'm going to say in some cases it can be quite healthy, and if overdone, it's definitely not healthy, and you need to find the balance for you. For the beans, but with the fruit, I'd say eat the fruit as much as you can. If you guys have never tasted the cacao fruit, you guys could order it online, link down below. And I just heard from a friend that if you guys have a Trader Joe's near you, they sell I believe, pasteurized or HPP, cacao fruit juice that does not have the beans. So you could actually taste what this amazing fruit tastes like.
I was opposed to cacao for a long time. Didn't use it at all. And now I just use it. Once in a while, I put some in my smoothie. That's I might eat the sweet part, and then sometimes I put it in my smoothie. Makes the smoothie taste kind of nice.
But you use it a little bit differently than most people would, Kaelash, because you get the whole pod because they grow here, and then you basically just take out the raw cacao, because most times you guys maybe buy it. You might say raw, but it's potentially even, heat processed. You're getting the real natural stuff that has not been dried.
Yeah, that's how I use it. That's right.
The fresh brew with the bean at the same time.
Correct.
So that's a lot different. But you guys can order. You guys could order this online like Kaelash is eating. Like I'm bringing back a whole suitcase of this stuff. Link down below to that. And what are your thoughts now, Kaelash? How does it make you feel when you eat it? Does it buzz you out and now you're just hyperactive all day, running around faster than your kid, or what? Because he could get hyperactive sometimes.
No, I don't. And I know some people could.
Yeah.
And it has caffeine in it, and I know for some people it's really not what they should be.
Stimulant, yeah. Especially later in the day.
And I drank coffee before I went raw, and I didn't feel that much even drinking coffee, And here with the cacao, I don't feel much of a difference, if any difference. I do it more for the flavor, really, anything. And I know there's some antioxidants in there that I read from this. I do it more for that, or for fun.
All right, cool. All right, Kaelash, so a big area that I'm really into lately, and even posted online on my YouTube channel, my microbiome results after being into a raw vegan diet for 27 years. What are your thoughts on the microbiome? Is it legitimate science? Is it hogwash? Is it BS? Does it not really matter? Like some raw vegans claim that even if I got a microbiome test, I wouldn't change anything because I believe what I'm doing is the best way to live, despite whatever my microbiome test says.
Well, it's a pretty new field.
Yes.
And we don't know that much about it yet.
Yeah.
But I believe what we know and what we're finding out is true, is real. And I'm curious to see how this whole field will really unfold over the next few years. We do teach it at the Ann Wigmore Institute. We do teach that it's very important. We used to call it friendly flora, and now we call it microbiome. And we know how the connection, your transmitters, so many are produced in your gut, and it really feeds your transmitters. And so I'm learning about it. I'm not close to being expert about it. And I'm going to do the microbiome test, and I'm curious to see the results, and I will make some dietary changes if necessary based on the test results. So I do believe in it, otherwise I would do the test. And I believe that's just something exciting, how this is this new field. And of course it's not new, but the way we're looking at it as humans and researching it is new. And it's something I'm really excited learning more about.
Cool. Yeah, no, it's been a game changer to me because, as you know, Kaelash, I got into raw foods because I almost lost my life when I was younger due to some immune challenges that the doctors blamed on actually my genes. And I've learned since then that, we can basically, epigenetics and how we could modify the expression of our genes through our lifestyle. And of course, I've also learned that 70 to 80% of our immune system is based directly upon our microbiome. And because I was not breastfed as a child, that kind of gave me a certain microbiome from childhood that I'm now trying to basically recover. And which in many cases, just a raw food diet alone can help many people, I believe, recover their microbiome and get it to where it needs to be because they're eating diets rich in fiber. That being said, I also believe that a raw vegan diet may restrict certain kinds of fiber and nutrients that can also feed our microbiome. So I'm really curious to, see your microbiome as well as other, friends that are raw vegan in the future to see their microbiome results and see if I can make correlations like, hey, if you eat a lot of fruit, then you won't have these bacteria. But if you eat more balanced, then you will. I mean, I have no idea what's going to happen, and of course, people that eat junk food are going to really have a trash microbiome, and it's going to show. And hopefully after getting a microbiome test, you maybe could modify it and see if your next test improves or not. And, I really think it's important. And I, of course, wish that I had a microbiome test when I started the raw vegan journey so I could see how my microbiome progressed and changed over time. Plus, how much sleep you get, how much meditation, exercise you do, sleep. So many things can affect your microbiome, your environment. And so it's just all unknown, or little known science area that will hopefully improve in the future. And I'm trying to do, review a lot of studies as well as listen to microbiome experts to learn about this so I could, use it for myself and more importantly, share it with you guys out there. So I also like Kaelash, really look forward to the new emerging science and learn more about it in the future. So Kaelash, I know I would consider you a yogi master. I don't know if you would say that, but you're a yoga teacher trainer for sure. And you're into meditation. What are your thoughts on garlic and onions?
I grew up in the yogic household. My parents are yoga practitioners, meditation practitioners, more so than the postures. They are really into meditation. And I grew up without onion, garlic, and leeks, anything from that family, because especially my dad, he's like, when I eat those foods, I can't meditate very well. He said it's so hard for me to clear my mind and have one-pointed focused attention. And so I was growing up in that kind of environment, and I kind of just took that information in without thinking or questioning it too much on what's in Ayurveda and yoga called a sattvic diet. And then basically I didn't like onions very much anyway. So here and there I started trying, and garlic, and it's not something that I really enjoyed. And then what I started noticing, just with the green onions actually, when I started noticing, is that they would give me nightmares.
Wow.
So I started to be very, very conscious about that. And I kind of also connect with, how it affects everything we eat has an effect on your glands and your endocrine system. And so it causes the release of certain glands that can cause restlessness of mind. And so it can be more difficult to play and meditate if you're eating onion and garlic. That's why several religions and spiritual traditions teach their followers, their practitioners, not to eat anything from the onion and garlic family, such as very strict yogis. Also, they're avoiding anything from those families. I do realize there's some health benefits to that, and that's not a question. So there's some health benefits for some people. For some people, there isn't, because onion and garlic or anything in that family can be very irritating to the digestive tract. Just like when you're cutting onions, it hurts your eyes, and our digestive tract is made of the same tissue, so it can be, and it actually touches it when it goes to your digestive tract. So for some people, it can be very aggressive and abrasive. And even the chives or green onions, some people cannot take it that have digestive system issues. So they can be good for some people, I believe, and I know you'll speak to that. There's some benefits, and for other people not. So I'd say, it depends a little bit on your constitution a little bit, and also if you do meditate, and if you don't, then you may not notice much of a difference. And with my dreams, you could say, yeah, sure, that it affects your mind, so you have a nightmare every time because the effect. But what happened a few times, I had these bad dreams, and I thought I was eating no onion and no garlic, and then I remember that I took something like a cracker at times that somebody offered to me that had some chives in them, and then I just traced it back to the pole. And that happened so many times that now I reliably can say for myself that those foods cause me nightmares, and I'd rather not eat anything that causes me nightmares, So other than that, it doesn't affect my digestive system negatively. Some people it does, but it doesn't affect mine. And I do just notice a little bit of the focus and concentration. It's a little harder for me to focus when I eat onion and garlic. And they cleave more, based on what the yogis say, more desire, like accumulation, I need more. I need something else. I need another experience. I need it's my sexual desire. That's why monks and nuns are taught not to eat in certain traditions onion and garlic. And it slows down your reactivity too. I'm not sure if that's still the case, but at some point, so pilots I talked to, they were told not to eat anything from their family because it slowed down their reactivity, which, you know, as a pilot,
it's essential.
Essential. So that's my take on onion and garlic.
Yeah, this is where Kaelash and I differ a little bit. I completely respect Kaelash's opinion because he is a yogi, a meditator, which I need to do more and even get into that stuff. So it'll be interesting when I get into that. Maybe that's why I cannot meditate. I cannot get focused because I eat garlic and onions. So, you know, my belief is, you know, based on the research, of course, and the research says that garlic and onion families are anti-cancer and can have many health benefits, antiviral, antifungal, all these things. You know, of course, I don't want to overdose on these things. And I do notice, Kaelash, like you had said, if I eat too much garlic, like one of the recipes that I make, I basically use avocado, sprouted buckwheats, chopped up parsley, and then just basically prep garlic, like maybe even a whole head of garlic, like a bunch of cloves if it's like a more lighter garlic, because actually there's some garlics that are really spicy and some are, you know, more mild. You know, then I just feel kind of like disconnected after I eat that. I'm just like spacey, right? And like, but then that's like at the end of the night, then I'm like, all right, I'm just passing out now, like whatever. So I do respect that, yeah, but that in most cases I just eat small amounts where I add one onion to a huge salad and I don't taste it. You know, of course, some onions are more spicy than others. Green onions tend to be less spicy. If you want the least spicy onion family plant, I'd recommend Chinese chives or Ha. They have very little onion flavor, but just tad bits. So one day, hopefully, maybe get you to try a little bit and see if it still gives you bad dreams because it has a very little of the onion properties in there. So yeah, I mean, I would say check in with yourself. You know, okay, if you're trying to heal from different situations, they can be quite helpful. But of course, if you're a meditator and, you know, you're just going to get your health benefits from other foods, that's great too. You know, I'm just sure what I do. I do eat onions and garlic on a regular basis. And, you know, there's many kinds of different ways to eat garlic and onions. Leeks are some of the healthiest, along with things like shallots. And more importantly, try to eat the greens instead of the bulbs that grow under the ground. They definitely have more higher antioxidant content.
Yeah, absolutely. And also if you have digestive issues, you might also want to pay attention, maybe for a while, not do any onion and garlic and see if that makes any difference. If it doesn't, you introduce them back in. But here in Wigmore, where I teach, a lot of people cannot have onion and garlic, and that's what their own discovery, that it irritates their digestive system. Whereas, like you said, with cancer, and it can be useful. I also wanted to say that a lot of people consider garlic a natural antibiotic, and I do as well. And the thing, I would rather take that than a pill.
Of course.
Obviously. The thing with antibiotics, as we know, and if you take antibiotics all the time, and then if you need it, then you have to up the dosage. And with garlic, that can be the case. I've seen that people that eat garlic all the time, and then they need an antibiotic, they had to weigh up their dosage to have the same effect. So I consider it a medicine also, and I consider it something that I would use very deliberately in certain situations, rather than all the time. And yes, that's one of the differences, and we don't fight about it.
No.
We respect each other's differences, and that we make food together, you know, we'll leave the garlic onion and then we add it later to it. So it's not a
big deal.
Not a big deal for us. We respect each other.
Now, the other point I want to make is, you know, while onion and garlic may be irritation for some people, in addition, you know, it also has prebiotic fibers in the garlic and onion that can actually feed your microbiome. So, you know, I'm getting away from like, this is all good and this is all bad. It really depends on how your microbiome is. Some people may do better and it may increase their microbiome if they eat garlic and onions. For others, maybe they don't need that because they have the bacteria already in their gut in an overgrowth state, you know, that is fed by the garlic and onion. So, you know, there's so many different variants, and microbiome is one consideration. spiritual practice and yoga, meditation is another consideration. Anti-cancer is another consideration. Using it as a food versus using it as a medicine, another consideration. So, we're just trying to give you guys options here and, any different ways to think about some of these things so that you guys could form your own opinions based on, our personal thoughts.
I also want to mention that from the Enwigmore perspective, garlic is used as a medicine, and also at the Enwigmore Institute, green onions are used, the green part of the green onions, and sprouts can be used as well. The onion sprouts, the garlic sprouts, I've tried them and they were much milder. The effect was much milder. And actually, I have to admit, the onion sprouts taste pretty great. I think it's just very unique. Again,
and do they give you bad dreams? The onion sprouts and garlic sprouts?
Not in small quantities.
And how much is that, like 1 teaspoon or just a whole little area?
Maybe half a cup.
Half a cup? Wow, so that's a good quantity. So you can still get the flavors without getting the negative effects, but you will, of course, still get some positive effects.
Yeah.
Health effects from that.
The flavor, I love this flavor. I don't like onion, but I like onion sprouts.
Yeah, it's more delicate flavor for sure. Yeah.
John, you make kombucha, don't you?
I do. I have 4 gallons brewing right now as I'm sitting here at my house.
So do you like it? Is it healthy? Is it good for you? Is it bad for you?
Opening a can of worms there, Kaelash. So, I think kombucha could be good or bad, and it really depends. I think a lot of the kombuchas in the store are basically just sugar water that they add sweeteners to, and in many cases they add probiotics because it's been heat pasteurized, so they add like shelf-stable probiotics back into it. So if it says Gandin BC30 in there, they're adding probiotics back into the kombucha because you want it to have naturally occurring probiotics that would be in there from the fermentation. I believe that the probiotics from the fermentation is beneficial. I believe that some of the compounds from the tea can be beneficial. I believe the extra sugar in there, that they add in later or that is still existing that did not get fermented out is non-beneficial. I happen to like the carbonation and some of the flavors of some of the kombuchas. So my goal is to make it myself so that I could ferment it a bit longer than they would if I bought it in the store. So I basically get all the sugar out. I could still have some of the tea polyphenols, some of the organic acids, some of the probiotics, postbiotics that are in there without the sugar consequences. And of course, I could flavor it with real fruit juice instead of some kind of artificial flavors like some kombuchas you guys can buy. So Kaelash, what are your thoughts about kombucha?
Kombucha, I tried it once. Somebody gave me a little bit and it was really like going up my nose. It feels like it was like bubbling, and the carbonated, I don't like carbonated stuff. And kombucha carbonated tasted all right. And then I did some research and just wasn't very convincing. At least the store-bought kombucha, so not something that I drink. However, Rejuvelac would be a healthier version of a fermented drink, which is just cabbage blended with water, fermented on the counter for 3 days, and then straight to a milk bag. So that's something I drink regularly.
Yeah, I think that's probably healthier when we use less water, because kombucha is basically tea that's brewed with added sugar and then fermented. So there's mostly water with, a little bit of benefits from the tea. I think it'd be better to make Rejuvelac out of just cabbage juice, 100% straight, so you have the structured water, and then ferment that. So that'd be cool. So, Kaelash, let's move to the next one, which is an important topic, which is sleep. Is sleep important, unimportant? Can raw foodists sleep 2 hours because we're superheroes and we need less sleep because you're eating all raw vegan? What's been your experience?
Sleep is often seen as one of the pillars: exercise, diet, sleep. And recently I did a master class, and he said, sleep is not a pillar. Sleep is under everything. If you don't get enough sleep, it doesn't matter how you eat. It doesn't matter you exercise. Everything will be affected. In fact, our food choices are not the same than when we don't sleep enough. We reach toward, the studies that show this, we reach toward the kind of foods that are not good for us. Whereas if we did get enough sleep, we reach more toward healthier foods. And of course, that's a vicious cycle. When we eat healthier, we sleep better and we wake up more refreshed. So sleep is essential. There's people that claim that they only need a few hours, and I believe there's exceptions. I believe some people really do, and I don't think it's necessarily linked to being raw or not, because I know raw food is, long-term raw food is, I need a lot of sleep, and I know some that need very little sleep. So I'm not quite convinced that it's because of the raw foods. Will you need less sleep? Probably need less sleep because there's less stress on your body. But how much is less? I still think for most people, around 8 hours is a good amount of sleep to get for your body to do its healing and for your brain. Sleep is kind of like charging your batteries, charging your central nervous system. So I see it as essential, and also the time that you sleep. Studies have shown that sleeping before 10 is ideal, being in bed before 10. And even in the masterclass course I took, they say, between 10 and p.m. and 4 p.m. would be a pretty good time because it's the time that we get the most, like the fast charging station for the car. If you sleep during certain hours, we're just getting more. You're getting charged more. You get more of your sleep than if you sleep at other hours. So it's essential, absolutely, I believe. And I've seen actually one very famous person in the raw food movement who promotes cacao a lot. And he said, I need very little sleep. And then I saw him give an interview in the afternoon, and he was yawning constantly. And he said, all you need is cacao, and I need very little sleep. But then he was so tired. He seemed so tired throughout the day, and just didn't look very healthy either.
Wow. So my thoughts on sleep, Kaelash, is that, I would actually put in this day and age, when I first got into raw, I didn't think sleep as important. I thought it was a pillar, but, sleep to me is a foundation now. It's a foundation to health. You need to put your sleep first, even up more above your diet, in my personal opinion. Especially with my dad having Alzheimer's, when we sleep, we detoxify, heal, rebuild, recharge, whatever you want to say. Super critical. And I have a video where I link down below, where I use some different products to get more sleep, including blackout curtains, including a bed, thermoelectric cooler, so I can sleep at a cooler temperature. Because, in the tropics here, for sure, the days are warm and the nights get colder, and that signals our body to go to sleep. Another signal for our body to go to sleep is in the morning. It's nice and bright, so you need to expose yourselves to the bright lights outside. And when it gets dark, we have more red lights, the red hue of the sun as it goes down. You want to not have bright lights in your house. It's like all these little small things I've learned, you can make little tweaks so that you get better sleep. Of course, no screens late at night. Blacked out room, if you have little LEDs from your TV or whatever, that are your air cleaner. Actually, my air cleaner basically has the little lights and it lights up the whole room. You want to cover those with some black electrical tape. Silence, have a really good insulated room where it's silence, or play some, whatever, sounds that are like the ocean or something, white noise. The other thing that I learned is when I exercise more in the daytime and I tire myself out, go for a long hike or something, man, I just totally sleep way better at night. If I change my bedding regularly, I definitely sleep better than if I'm sleeping in like dirty sheets and stuff. I don't know if that's psychological or maybe there's some stuff in the sheets that I just, whatever. I also actually tape my mouth shut when I sleep, so I'm breathing through my nose. That's also good for our mouth health, so we're not drying out our mouth. And, nose breathing. So, yeah. And then I just ordered and got basically a monitor to monitor, an ECG sensor for my head to see the different stages of sleep. Because everybody likes to say, oh, you could do this many hours. And to me, it's not about the hours of sleep, but it's, going through the different stages and having the appropriate amount of time in each, REM state or the different stages of sleep that I need to look more into and make sure I'm getting enough. Because that, to me, is the pillar. And that's really going to be determining factor if I'm getting enough sleep or not, is if I'm in the different stages that different things and different detoxification things happen in each stage. So the next one is leafy green vegetables. Are they important? Are they not needed? Some raw food camps say leafy greens are toxic. You shouldn't eat kale. You should only eat baby lettuce. Some plants have too much oxalates, the greens, and all these things.
I think they're important.
Yeah.
They're essential to our health. And sure, it's good to vary those that have oxalates. You don't want to do only kale or only spinach or only collard or chard. I believe it's good to vary them, not to have the same ones all the time. And eat lettuce, eat microgreens, eat sprouts, the chlorophyll, the oxygen, the alkalizing effects, the fiber, the structure, the water. I don't see why one would say that they are not essentially important to us. I think they're really, really important. The more I eat, the better I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I would concur that leafy greens are one of the most important foods on a raw vegan diet, or any diet for that matter, even keto diets, which I'm not a fan of. They will even include leafy greens because they're, of course, low carb. But they are packed full of phytonutrients, vitamins, and minerals, and have, the least amount of calories in there. My goal is to eat literally 2 pounds of leafy greens a day. Some of those pounds are in the juice form, but some of them are just, chewed up in blended smoothies, blended salads, or just in my standard salad. And of course, these days I'm also sometimes heat processing my greens on more rare occasions. So I encourage you guys to increase your greens, whatever they are. And like Kaelash, I also agree that you want to diversify your greens, and don't just every week when you go to Costco buy the baby spinach, and every week you eat a whole tub of baby spinach, or you eat it every night. Try to get different kinds. Right? Get baby arugula, baby spinach, get the baby radicchio mix, eat all different kinds of greens. Go out wild harvesting for some of your greens. You just want to get more greens in you. Wine diversity purslane for your omega-3s, or so many different amazing leafy greens out there. Visit an Asian market. Asian markets generally have a wider variety of leafy greens that you guys could buy than a standard American supermarket.
And blending them can be a good way of getting more greens into your system, like into green smoothies.
Yep.
Blending them with fruit to make them taste good. You can take so many greens and blend them down, adding a little bit of fruits so you get the flavor, or juicing them too.
Of course.
And a lot of people wouldn't sit down and eat all those greens in a salad, but juiced or blended, you get a lot more greens in than you usually would.
Wonderful. All right, so this is a rigged question. So Kaelash, what are your thoughts on meditation and yoga?
Well, yoga in the West has been reduced to a form of exercise for many people, for most people, and it's become competitive and like a performing art, which originally, of course, it wasn't, and it also wasn't competitive. And in fact, before the postures, there was meditation. So meditation is really the heart of yoga, and the postures were developed for the meditator to be able to sit for a longer period of time, so it's healthy for the body. The postures can be, for the most part, good for the body to be more flexible. And in fact, looking at the older texts like the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, we see that postures are meditation postures. So the original yoga postures were all meditation postures, and then later others were added, but not too long ago even. So yoga really, the origins of yoga are meditation, and then later the postures were developed for physical health and also to balance our glandular system, which greatly influences how we feel and our thoughts. And the release of hormones through the glands affects what we do all the time and what we're thinking, even the food that we're choosing. And so it's hard to meditate when the mind is going all over the place. And so the postures can help to kind of calm and soothe the mind, which is really the definition of yoga. What is yoga? Patanjali Yoga Sutras. What is yoga? And it's yoga chitti vritti nirodha, which means yoga is the cessation of the mind stuff. So yoga is really the calming of the mind. And yoga is both a path, the 8 limbs, Patanjali, and other limbs and techniques. So it's a path, and it's also the goal. Yoga means union. So we practice yoga to experience union. And I know all of you have experienced that union, being maybe in nature or with somebody that you love, or eating a food that you love. So there can be that connection, the deeper, not unconscious eating, but a deeper connection, like this sense of oneness, feeling one with all and everything, unity So that's really the true purpose of yoga, rather than trying to bring your leg behind your head, just standing on one leg. But the yoga is really the inner work, and it's much more what you do with your mind than what you do with your body.
Wow. And what about the meditation, Kaelash? On your thoughts?
So meditation in this day and age, so many of us, we have lost the ability to focus and concentrate on just one thing. For many of us, the mind is just all over the place all the time. And meditation is really a way on focusing the mind and to experience that yoga. So one of the 8 limbs that I mentioned is meditation. Focusing the mind and then kind of merging with that object that you're focusing your mind on. So that's with that sense, that experience of union, that's spiritual meditation. I know there's even some of the big companies, some of the ones I don't like, they have meditation there. So they meditate, so they're thinking about how we can exploit other people better. How can we sell a product that nobody needs for a higher price? So that's not spiritual meditation. That's a way of abusing meditation. So just like anything, like a knife, you can use it to cut a fruit or a vegetable, or you can use it to kill somebody. So the meditation can be used in a positive way, and I would say that is really self-realization, or it can be used to do harm to, yourself and others as well. And in summary, the true intention of a yogi really is service to humanity and self-realization. You know thyself through meditation and postures that can facilitate deeper states of meditation.
Wow, you guys heard it there. And so my thoughts on yoga meditation is that I need to do it more. That this is a totally area that I'm not familiar with. And I defer to Kaelash, and I trust him, what he's telling you guys on yoga meditation. I try to live more mindfully versus doing yoga and meditation. Just trying to be in the present moment, and being in my garden really helped me with being in the present moment and being focused on what I'm doing and not being distracted about things that I did in the past or things that will happen in the future, but just living in the now. So that's where I'm at.
And you've been to my yoga classes a few times.
Been to your yoga classes, but now I know it goes even deeper than just doing the stretches. That I'm worried about stretching out. I'm not going to bring my arms back all the way or bring my feet up. But now I know it's even more, that I was not even aware of. So, these are things that I don't really know a lot about.
It's really a form of mindfulness, practicing mindfulness, just like on the DVDs that I made years back. It's like a form of really getting in touch more deeply with yourself, who you are. And
definitely something I need to do more of.
Why do you think it's important to buy organic, or does it matter? I mean, it all looks the same. It's really different. And if you buy it and it comes from one of these countries you've never even heard the name of, can you be sure that it's truly organic? Tell me about that.
All right, so my opinions of organic food is, once again, good, better, best. I encourage you guys to grow your own food. And when you grow your own food, you know exactly what was put into the soil, what was sprayed on it. You know the whole process, whereas if you're buying organic, at least it is a process. And hopefully you can trust the farmers that the process is proper and they're only putting on the organic pesticides and herbicides and enriching the soil with organic practices. But in my opinion, organic does not go far enough to include additional things into the soil to ensure you're going to have the highest quality food, right? That being said, organic is at least some kind of practices that will ensure in most cases, but not all, higher quality food than conventional foods. And in most cases as well, it's going to minimize your exposure to chemical pesticides and herbicides, fungicides that are sprayed on conventional food, including something really insipid as Roundup or glyphosate that can negatively affect our microbiome and probably our health in many other ways. So what I'm telling you guys is this. For me personally, I strive to buy organic whenever possible. On a rare occasion, if I can't find something organic or it's something, that may be on the Clean 15 list, I will buy it non-organic. If it's on the Dirty Dozen list, I will probably not buy it conventional. But my goal is to buy organic produce when I go shopping for produce, because I don't grow everything I need I think about 90% of what I buy is organic, actually. There's a small percentage that is not organic. Of course, my goal is to grow as much as I can. Of course, even more and above, if it's organic certified or not, I visit local farms in my area. I know all their growing practices. Even if they're not certified organic, I trust them because I've been to their farms. I see how they add compost to the soil, how they don't add chemical fertilizers, how they don't spray with different toxins. So, visit your local farmers, visit your local farmers markets, and make sure they're legit and you trust them. And then, I wouldn't be so concerned about this organic label.
Yeah, in Germany, it was so easy to buy all organic foods and we eat all organic. And in California, it was pretty easy too. So for a while, I succeeded eating pretty much all organic, which I think, like you said, it's so much better for you. It's got to be better because things that have toxins on them or in them can't be as good as non-toxins, non-toxic foods or foods that have less toxins on them or in them. Here in Puerto Rico, also when I lived in Brazil, it's pretty tough to eat all organic. I do the best that I can. And then sometimes people like, yeah, but you're eating all this toxic stuff. This is how you're going to get sick. They're like, I don't eat much toxic stuff. But when I do eat something that's not organic, I don't think about it. I eat it in peace. And I see a lot of people going like, oh, this is not organic. And then they go really toxic about it. They get really toxic about it. And in their mind, they're eating is, oh, this is not good for me. I shouldn't be eating this. This is not good for me. And they're like, you're eating something that is not as good as, but you don't need to put all these toxins into your mind. Just at least eat it and be at peace with what you're eating instead of toxifying your mind while you're eating something that may be a bit toxic. But I think for the most part, even non-organic foods are still more beneficial than organic than other foods, I should say.
Of course.
Now, there's so many other foods, and of course, if you cook, you concentrate the toxins. And also animal foods, the concentration of toxins is so much denser, so much higher than in non-organic fruits and vegetables and nuts and so forth. So I'd say my ideal is to grow everything myself. Like that's really the dream. And until then, it sprouts and buys organic food if you have it available, and if not, still do your best and don't worry too much about it. That's what I would say.
Yeah, just a comment finally, Kaelash. I would say that even if you get conventional fruits and vegetables to eat because you're not able to find or even afford organic fruits and vegetables or non-organic fruits and vegetables, they're still the healthiest thing in the grocery store. So just be where you're at, and enjoy the fruits and vegetables because you're still doing way better than most of society as it is. Yeah, so I do not want to dissuade you from not eating more fruits and vegetables because they have to be non-organic and you can't find them organic or they're too expensive for you.
Or you have to eat something.
And you got to eat something, so why not eat more produce?
Because they're lower down
on the concentration, yes. All right, Kaelash, so what are your thoughts on grains?
I think it depends a little bit on the constitution of the person. From my observation, I do quite well with grains. I don't have a gluten intolerance either, so I could even do gluten-containing grains, and I have, and they didn't have any negative effect on me. I avoid them. I don't use them usually. And one of my observations with grains is that at least the ones I get here in Puerto Rico, be it here in the store or even order, a lot of the time they don't sprout anymore. So in the past I would soak it be sprouting while it was soaking. I would find really great buckwheat and amaranth and so forth. And now, in my experience, sure there's some places we can find better sprouting grains, but it's becoming harder and harder to find sprouting grains. And I like to sprout my grains before I use them. So the two that I use the most are buckwheat. I just soak it for half an hour and sprout it for a day or two, and then it's going on salads and smoothies, in my energy soup I use, or just like that. I eat it. I love the sprouted buckwheat. And the other one is the oats, the gluten-free sprouted oats. I also I like those in my smoothie a lot. And Yeah, so tell me, grains, what do you think?
So for the longest time, actually, Kaelash eat a lot more grains than me, being at Anwick or sprouting them and eating them, and I basically excluded them from my diet. Number one, for the most of my raw foods, I ate them every now and then, some oats and some other random grains. Eat some buckwheat, that's probably one of my favorites. And then I think that most Americans eat far too many grains because it's in cereal, it's in bread, it's in, cookies and all these. Like most people eat a grain-based diet, which I do not believe we should have a grain-based diet. I like to eat a fruit and vegetable-based diet with some grains included in, once again, for the fiber, for the phytonutrients, for the vitamins, minerals, and to displace, for example, eating extra fruit. So, I've been enjoying like my overnight oats with the sprouted, oatmeal that you buy also that's organic and certified glyphosate-free. Just because it's organic doesn't mean it's going to be automatic glyphosate-free. You would think it is, but you should make sure it's certified because there's a big scam on organic oats contain glyphosate, which is not healthy in my opinion. But actually they have it at Costco or Whole Foods. You can get the 1 degree sprouted oats, same ones Kaelash and I get. They're basically sprouted and then dehydrated and then rolled. And I like to make those. In addition to that, I will also I could get sprouting buckwheat. Sometimes if it doesn't sprout, then I'll end up cooking it and I'll add it to my oatmeal. I also will add quinoa and millet into my Instant Pot. I will also add even things like organic einkorn from Europe, which is basically an ancient, wheat that I will also, often I like to sprout it and eat it, but these days I just been actually pressure cooking it in with my oatmeal to create a greater diversity of foods. I'm also not gluten sensitive or celiac or anything. If I was, I would probably avoid them. But yeah, I think in small amounts, it could be definitely beneficial, and you gotta, see for yourself how it affects you. When I notice when I have oatmeal in the morning, I could be good for like 4 hours. And I'll soon have a video on how I make my oatmeal, high probiotic, high prebiotic fibers in there. Tastes amazing. My dog loves it too. And I'm good for 4 hours. And if I have like a juice, I want to eat something within the next hour. And if I have fruit, that burns to me and I'm still hungry. So oatmeal definitely allows me to, curb my hunger for longer and stay satisfied. And more importantly, get some extra fiber and different kinds of fiber in me. All right, Kaelash, so what are your thoughts on eating late at night? And do you want to let everybody know what time you normally go to bed?
I normally go to bed or to sleep, I should say, at 8:30. Usually at 8 o'clock, I start my yoga meditation practice. That is, I chant for 10 minutes and then I meditate for 20 minutes. And then it's like digestion, It's like we need to give our digestive system a break to digest the food. And meditation is kind of digesting all the impressions of the day. So I like to do that before going to bed, going to sleep. Sleeping or eating late at night it's difficult not to. I find.
What's the latest you normally eat, Kaelash?
Usually I don't eat anything after 7. So as I go to sleep at 8:30, like lying down. So I like to have my last meal really 2 or 3 hours before sleeping. So I prefer really to have dinner at 5:30 or 6, which is my ideal. And the latest I would have it is like at 7, but then I try to keep it really light to like an energy soup, something blended, something that digests rather quickly. But it's been a challenge for me at times, and just getting home. My kid has soccer practice some days until 7:30 or 8 o'clock, and then what I do is take my food with me if I can and things like that. But it's the excuses, there's always excuses. I mean, and really, if I want to, and I know if I really am committed to, I can succeed with eating early. And that's something I'm still working on. And at times I'm better at it than other times. But it can be a challenge for me, and I know for many, many people.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably one of the things that I haven't done the best over my raw foods career is I'm like a night owl. I'll go to bed, maybe when I was younger, maybe by midnight or 1 sometimes, because I have so much energy on this raw food diet. So I find that eating some heat processed foods, I'm able to like go to sleep a little bit earlier, because it does make me in some instances a little bit more tired. Maybe that's the heat processed food, or maybe it's just in my mind, I don't know. But it is one of my goals that I believe eating for earlier in the day is critically important to do, and to stop eating several hours before you go to bed. So these days, if I'm home, not traveling, my goal is to get to bed by 11. Sometimes I give myself a little leeway, like an hour, so I go to bed at 12. So then my goal is to stop eating at 8 o'clock, but then also I'm a little bit lenient, so I give myself 9 o'clock, which is actually still too late in my book, because I really would like to stop eating like at 7 and then go to bed about 10 and give myself a nice window, of not eating, and then wake up in the morning and then eat immediately after I awaken. And instead of just not eating in the morning, I want to try to eat in the morning, when my body is maybe more able to digest things and have better response to glucose, for example, and then not eat at night. And once again, like Kaelash, I am still working on that process myself, and I need to get better, and I'm always so busy, I don't have time to pre-make food, and I make everything I eat, and it's challenging. Life is challenging, and I'm doing the best I can, and hopefully one day I'll be able to, stop eating, earlier, and then have several hours before I go to bed, and also go to bed a little bit earlier as well too.
So John, freeze-dried and dehydrated food. Is that kind of the same thing? I know it's not, but a lot of people have no clue that there's a huge difference. I mean, just in taste, texture, and between freeze-dried and dehydrated food. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so dehydrated versus freeze-dried versus dried food. So the first thing I will say straight up is that dried food is not optimal. And dried food, you can have underneath dried food, you have freeze-dried or dehydrated food, right? Why? Is because it is missing the water content. We are 70 to 75% water. And if you take the water and remove the water out of the food, when you eat the food, it dehydrates you. That's another reason why many cooked foods are also not so good for us, because it dehydrates you, and our bodies need water. Best water is, of course, from structured water, from the fruits and vegetables, of course. Or I've been drinking lots of coconuts this trip. But getting back to the dehydrated food, while it is not optimal, hey, it can fill a need in people's lives, because dehydrated food might be important for camping on a camping trip when it's lighter, or to have a more concentrated foods, more concentrated nutrients, such as green powders that are dehydrated. My research, has shown me that dehydrated food, even at 118 degrees where you keep the enzymes, may not be the most optimal thing, because the dehydration process at a low temperature takes a lot longer to do. So while you may be preserving enzymes, you're basically reducing phytonutrients and antioxidants as shown in published studies. And so actually, I would recommend, if you do dehydration, I would recommend putting it a little bit higher. So yes, you will remove the enzymes, but even at 118, I'm kind of like, do enzymes really still exist? And if you're dehydrating food, expecting enzymes, I think you're just kind of high anyways, because for enzymes, surely you should be eating fermented foods or sprouts that are much higher in enzymatic activity. So, of course, dehydrated foods can be fun, and if eating some dehydrated kale, which I like to do when I have an abundance of kale in my garden, gets you from eating, potato chips that are fried, that's a move in the right direction. If eating kale chips stops you from eating a kale salad that's fresh, that's not a good move in the right direction. If you're taking kale chips on an airplane flight so you don't eat the roasted nuts on the airplane, that's a good thing. So once again, we need to look at these things in, good, better, best, and in a certain situation you're in. So that's my general thoughts on dehydrated food, is that I try to avoid it these days. My goal these days, if I do eat dried food, is my goal is to eat freeze-dried food. Freeze-dried food is done under vacuum. So it's done in an oxygen-deprived environment when the food is frozen. It's at a lot lower temperature, and it does take a lot longer. Plus, it does not break down like the cell walls as much, so it kind of basically just extracts the moisture, so the texture is a lot better. It's not compacted like freeze-dried jackfruit. To me, reminds me of fortune cookies, whereas, dehydrated jackfruit gets all hard and chewy. Freeze-dried jackfruit is nice and crisp and crunchy, and this is a flavor that, you're pretty much not going to get unless you're frying your food if you're trying to eat healthy. So I think, freeze-dried food can be one of the best things to supplement your diet, but should not take the place of eating healthy foods. Of course, I also believe that freeze-dried food is probably one of the best ways to preserve your food for up to 25 years in case there is some emergency situation and the food supply trucking gets cut off and you're like in a hurricane. You could have a little bunker of freeze-dried food to eat that's of the highest quality. And yeah, that's what I'm going to say, Kaelash. Good, better, best. And I think freeze-dried food can play a place. Although I will also admit that I have overdosed on freeze-dried food and gained weight because it is so delicious and so easy to eat, especially the freeze-dried fruits where the sugar is more enhanced because you're removing the water content from the food.
So is that considered raw? Is freeze-dried food considered raw food?
For me, I consider freeze-dried food more raw than dehydrated food, even if done at 118 degrees, Kaelash.
And does it have enzymes? Do you know?
I mean, so I believe freeze-dried food has a higher probability chance of having enzymes than dehydrated foods. And it is proven by science that it does have more phytonutrients than dehydrated food. Enzymes, I haven't seen a study relating to that yet, but I know, say, probiotics, you could basically freeze-dry probiotics, put them in capsules, you eat them, and they're still alive, and they will colonize your gut because freeze-drying does preserve the bacteria. So I'd also believe that it potentially can preserve the enzymes as well, but I'm no expert in this topic. But, once again, if you're eating freeze-dried food for your enzymes, I think you got a couple screws loose because you really should be eating live sprouts and fermented foods and other foods that are really a lot higher in enzymes, or even, I take an enzyme supplement to help me with my digestion of some heat processed foods, for example. But I know for a fact that freeze-dried compared to dehydration contains a lot more of the phytonutrients and preserves more of the overall nutrition and flavors, and storability of the food.
So could that help somebody who wants to gain weight because it's calorically denser, the freeze-dried food?
Yes, because you're removing the water content. So even if you freeze-dry beans or whatever, you're removing the water content. So now the food is concentrated. So the optimal thing, actually, in my book, is if you juice cauliflower. So you got the cauliflower juice, you're removing some of the fiber, and then combine that back with freeze-dried cauliflower. And that's like really going to be power-packed because now you got the fiber and the juice. That's basically, you're combining the best of both worlds back into the, not exactly cauliflower, but something even more nutritious, or you could do that with fruits even. So you're still going to get the water content, but then also, more of the different nutrients as well as the, carbohydrates and the sugars in the freeze-dried fruits.
Wow, I can't wait to get my freeze-dried.
You could put some weight on, yeah. So the challenge is like I put too much weight on it. It's been a little bit more challenging to keep it off, but you're a lot more active than I am, Kaelash. Plus you eat earlier, go to bed earlier, and of course you do your meditation and yoga practices, all things that I aspire to. So, Kaelash, what are your thoughts on freeze-dried and dehydrated and dried food?
Well, I certainly like the texture of the freeze-dried food. It's just amazing. You mentioned the jackfruit, and it's just out of this world, the flavor, the texture, and it's something I'd really like to eat more of. Dehydrated foods, well, I kind of like them, but I don't know, they kind of hard. They're crunchy. I mean, I could see how they're a good transition for many people from cooked food to raw food. They like bridge, and of course the machine is much more affordable and dehydrated as opposed to a freeze dryer. So I think it can be helpful for many people who need that crunch, because we don't just eat for nutrients or color, we eat for texture too. And I think it can be a great transitional food, or even help people to stay on raw foods when in general eat healthier. And those machines are affordable. Also, any leftovers can be put in there. And when mangoes are falling off the tree, I can put them in my dehydrator and eat mangoes even in the off season and so forth. Waste not, want not. So it's a great way of using your leftovers for something and extending your season and concentrating flavors like tomatoes or fruits. You concentrate the sugar on the salty flavor of those states. And now that we have freeze drying, I think once the machines or the freeze dried food becomes more affordable, I think a lot of people would love to do less dehydrated and more freeze-dried.
Yeah, I mean, I see freeze-dried food as one of the ways into the future for higher quality, more nutrition. You know, you guys could do Google searches for freeze-dried and put in the food, you know, like I used to buy freeze-dried peas and corn. You could buy many freeze-dried, you know, fruits and vegetables online as well. I get my freeze-dried durian from Mount Monarch. And hopefully soon enough, Kaelash will start freeze-drying and offering his freeze-dried foods from here in Puerto Rico, you know, to the world out there, and we'll ship hopefully one of these days when he gets that business up and running, even growing some of the food himself here on his farm, and then being able to make more freeze-dried raw food available to people, because not many people are really doing that yet.
I think, like we talked about vacuum blending earlier, that's kind of like from dehydrated food to freeze-drying is like the next step.
From blending to vacuum blending.
From blending to vacuum blending is like from dehydrating to freeze-drying is like the next level, the next step, more nutrients and food that lasts longer and still maintains its nutrients for a longer period of time.
Or even just traditional high-speed juicing to slow juicing to even now vacuum juicing. Once again, these things where you exclude the oxygen, like vacuum blending, like vacuum juicing, and like freeze-drying, these are the new technologies that I want you guys to invest in now if you are able to do so you guys can start reaping the rewards, the benefits from more nutrition, better flavors, and even better storability in all these three items.
I think these are really exciting times that we live in.
Okay.
I think it's really amazing the things that just over the past couple of decades that have become available and the research, and so it's exciting to be alive, I think. And
yes, we are lucky to be alive now and all these amazing developments are happening.
So thanks a lot for being here and spending this time with me, John, and I hope you all learned something from this. And thanks, John. I always learn something from you, be it here in the session or out in life and preparing stuff. So also thanks.
All right. Thank you, Kaelash, for being in the show today and, you know, sharing with my viewers all your thoughts and knowledge and wisdom as well. So do you have any final comments or words of wisdom you'd like to share with my viewers as a final message to everybody out there today, Kaelash?
Man, I'd say start meditating if you can. And also include more greens. Those are the two things. Eat more greens and also start meditating if we can.
All right. So yeah, I mean, I would definitely concur. I definitely concur that meditation is good, and I need to do that myself. I would definitely say eat more greens, and more importantly, look into some of the, you know, food processing techniques such as vacuum juicing, vacuum blending, and even the freeze drying under vacuum that can enhance your life. These are some things that many people in raw foods don't talk about, but you know, I'm always here to bring you guys the latest information so that I could accelerate your health, you know, through the knowledge that I've learned, that I've also shared with my friends who have adopted it, and then they could also spread this knowledge out to other people as well, and just we could get more people healthier by increasing the nutrition, bettering the flavors and taste sensations, more importantly, storability to prevent the food waste. So if you guys enjoyed this episode today, hey, please be sure to give this video a big thumbs up. More importantly, share this with other people that are on a raw vegan diet, plant-based diet, or other diets so that they could learn our opinions and our thoughts on the many topics that we shared with you guys today. Once again, we have over 55 years of combined experience on a raw vegan diet, doing this, you know, for our health and life enhancement. Also, be sure to click that subscribe button right down below so you don't miss out on my new upcoming episodes. I have episodes coming out every 5 to 7 days. You don't know what's up or what you'll be learning on my YouTube channel. Make sure to click the bell to notify as my new videos are out. And finally, be sure to check my past episodes. Our past episodes are a wealth of knowledge. Over 700 episodes at this time on the channel dedicated to you guys, all about eating more fresh fruits and vegetables. And I'll put a bunch of links down below to this video with videos I've made with Kaelash in the past about, you know, he has a yoga practice that I put online on my channel, and I hope he creates his own channel one of these days with his meditation and yoga practices so that you guys could benefit from. So with that, my name is John Kohler with OKRaw.com. We'll see you next time. And until then, remember, keep eating your fresh fruits and vegetables, sprout microgreens, and get into yoga and meditation. They're always the best.